Nagaland Child Commission for Protection of Child Rights pa Dimapur Press Club logode collaborate kurigina aji building a child friendly media laga topic logina workshop thakishi Hotel Saramati Dimapur de Imli Mongla Special Public Prosecutor FTSC Dimapur pa child rights opor media laga roles or responsibilities laga khota kurishi.
It's actually an honor for me to stand in front of this gathering of people who informs millions or lakhs in a day. Those who uphold a mirror to society and is doing so, shape public conscience and national character. You are rightly called the fourth pillar of democracy. You are rightly called the fourth pillar of democracy because where laws may stop sometimes short, but sunlight and scrutiny must continue, and you provide that sunlight. Today I speak about a responsibility that rests upon that very light the call to make media child-friendly. This is not a niche concern. It is a test of our collective maturity as a democracy. How we report our children, be it victim, witness, or those in conflict with the law. Let me begin with a simple truth. Words heal, words also wound. A single headline, a photograph, or a hashtag can protect a child's dignity or destroy it forever. And the law, including the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences 2012 and the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act 2015, and our constitutional values require that we always choose protection over a hashtag. India has the world's largest population of children, when we ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Child, we promised every children participation and development. Our constitution mirrors that promise. I will just go through some of the articles which mirror the rights of the children. Article 14, it guarantees equality before law. Article 15.3 empowers the state to make special provision for children. Article 21, it is enshrined that the right to life in dignity, which includes privacy and the directive principles of the state policy, particularly Article 39F, reminds us that childhood must be protected from exploitation and moral or material abandonment. Yet, many a times, in a rush for clicks or breaking news, which the media sometimes forgets that one careless disclosure can scar a child's life forever. Now, before going in depth, I just want to I want to say something that I wished that today, not only the press, but it would have been better if we had called the village councils of the nearby the Dimapur, and there are so many YouTube content creators these days, so it would have been better if the congregation, it would have made the congregation even more fuller instead of just the press, because I'm sure the press are more aware of all the rights so far. However, those content creators in the village councils or the chairmen of the nearby villages, they are need to be taught more on this topic than the press. That is what I feel. Now, I do not say that, just a while ago I have said that most of the time the media do things in rush for clicks or clickbites or like for breaking news. I'm not saying this to criticize the media. I see this as a reminder that the privilege of a microphone carries the burden of conscience. When a child becomes the center of a story, the usual rule of journalism must give way to deeper ethics and empathy. Now, let us look closely at the legal foundation that governs your responsibility. The Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012, which is also known as POCSO Act, was enacted to create a child-friendly system of justice. It defines a child as a person who is below the age of 18 years and places duties upon all citizens, primarily including journalists. Now, when we go and look at Section 19 of the same Act, it says it is mandatory to report any offense under this Act. If you come across information or material about sexual abuse, before you report it to the public, it is your duty to report it to the nearest police station or the Child Welfare Committee. Now, because the section says silence is complicity. Now, Section 20 of the same Act, it strengthens this by directing that such information must be passed on even by media personnel. I think you are getting it. Now, Section 19 says it is mandatory to report. Now, Section 20 is strengthening it by saying that it should be directed that such information must be passed on even by media personnel or hospitals, studios, hotels, or clubs. Anyone who comes across sexually abused children or anything that's involving children. Now, the same Act again, in Section 21, it prescribes punishment for failure to report. That means, if the media or any individual ignores or suppresses evidence, they can be prosecuted. And then comes Section 23, which directly addresses to the media, that is the journalist, I can say, or any content creator. Now, this it prohibits publication that lowers a child's reputation, infringes privacy, or reveals identity in any way. No name, no photograph, no address, no school identity, nothing that can identify a child's identity should be published in any form or any manner. Even in indirect clue, sometimes I've seen some instances where our media goes to a spot, that is to the victim's house, outside his or her house. That is also indirectly you are giving the identity of the victim. According to this Act, you should not even indirectly give any clue where the child comes from. So you should always remember that. That is a very important point. Now, I have also seen instances where you stand in front of the school the child or the victim is. That means if you reveal that I'm studying in like Little Star Higher Secondary School, that means people will automatically start inquiring and then get to know that, oh, this child is from this particular school. That means they will know the identity of the child. So keeping that in mind, when you inform anything that's relating to a child, you should never forget those small things which amounts a big thing for the children. Now, coming to the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, it is equally important, and it deals with children both as victims and as accused. It views a child in conflict with law as a person in need of care and rehabilitation, not condemnation, not as a criminal. Now, Section 74 of the JT Act categorically forbids disclosure of a child's identity. name, address, the same as POCSO. Name, address, photography, or any other detail that will lead to identification. That is, it's not about just the victim, but even the person, the child in conflict with law. They're talking about this. So this JG Act doesn't particularly speaks about victim only, but it speaks about the child who is in conflict with law. That means you are not supposed to. There was an instance just recent months ago where a child in conflict's identity was like being revealed. So those kind of incidents should be avoided after today. Now, even the police are prohibited, according to GTPL. Even police, the person who is investigating the case is even prohibited to disclose anything. That means, who are we? Who are we? Now we should keep that in mind. And also, when addressing in the media, you must always use the correct terminology when it is a child in conflict with law. You should never address the child as a criminal, but a child in conflict with law. You cannot address him as an accused person also, and you should not also address as a criminal. But it is a child who needs care and rehabilitation. So keeping that in mind, we should term that person as a child in conflict with law. Now let me go to NCPCR and NHRC guidelines. NCPCR means the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights and the National Human Rights Commission. I'll just give a brief note about the guidelines that these two have given for media. Now, the emphasis on avoiding sensationalism, prioritizing the best interests of the child, consulting child rights expert before publishing sensitive material, and focusing on prevention, rehabilitation, and justice, not shock value. They remind us that a child is not a story to be sold. Remember that. A child is not a story to be sold, but a life to be protected. Constitutional anchor. Our Constitution forms the bedrock of these principles. While Article 19(1)(a) gives freedom of speech and expression, Article 19(2) also permits reasonable restriction in the interest of decency, morality, and protection of children. Thus, freedom of press does not mean freedom to harm. Article 21 guarantees the right to life and dignity, and courts have consistently held that the dignity includes privacy. The Press Council of India, I think you're all aware that the Press Council of India, the NCPCR, and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting (MIP) have repeatedly warned that interviews or visuals of child victims violate both law and ethics. Now, coming to building a child-friendly media is not just about avoiding punishment. It is not just about avoiding punishment, it is about embracing responsibility. Now, every newsroom should institute child sensitivity protocol. No name or photo of the child victim or accused, headlines that informs not exploit, verification of facts is very important, legal consultation before publication, and time-to-time training on POCSO, JG Act, and digital ethics is very important. Editors must also cultivate a newsroom culture where caution is not censorship but conscience. As a journalist, your mission is truth, but truth must be tempered with humanity. You can name institutions that fail, expose systems that protect predators, shield the child from the public gaze. That encourage with compassion, not cowardice. Violating these laws carry legal moral weight. Editors, publishers, and owners can face criminal liability. Beyond fines and jail terms lies something even graver, the irreversible moral cause of harming a child's future. Now, we should all remember that reputation can be rebuilt, but the childhood cannot. I urge the media fraternity to adopt a child protection editorial policy, trained every staff in the POCSO JG Act and the BNS, appoint a child right focal person in every newsroom, appoint a child right focal person in every newsroom, partner with NSCPCR and Child Welfare Committee, display child helpline number below the screen of your TV, of your news channel when reporting a story about children, and shift from crime shock to rights restoration journalism. Children are not headlines, they are lives, tender, unformed, and full of promises. Now, let me go to the facts again, the law again. Under POCSO Act, even online intermediaries have duties. Deletion alone is insufficient. They must preserve evidence and report content to authorities. Every newsroom, portal, and content platform must recognize the child sexual abuse material, which is also known as CSAM, is not a content, but it is a criminal evidence. This is where the BNS, which is the short form of Paradya Naya Sanhita, formerly known as the Indian Penal Code, come into picture. Now, your failure can lead you punishment up to under Section 353 of the BNS for false or misleading publication, which will cause like public drama, as in like there are instances where news were sensationalizes, and then public uproar happens. So avoid those kind of things. If your news channel happens to give misleading or false information, you will be penalized under Section 353 of the BNS. Now, you will also be punished under 356 of the BNS, that is for defamation, because if giving false information amounts to defamation. And you will also be punished under 196 of the BNS, which deals with the content that incites hatred amongst a community or a particular group of people. And although these sections are not child specific, but this provision directly comes in contact with the POCSO Act and the JG Act. Now, let me not speak about theory alone, but I'll talk about some real cases where which shows both harm as well as hope. In recent years, in 2024, in Madhya Pradesh, a journalist and a publisher were convicted under Section 23 of the POCSO Act for 1 year and with fine. Now, in this case, they were sentenced to 1 year with fine because they published, maybe unknowingly, published the picture of the victim. So, this is one instance. Closer home, when we look at Nagaland, there is one case, Yelipumu Yantan versus State of Nagaland, where an advocate, where a village council, the village council member, and some other people have disclosed the clear identity of the victim in newspapers, and they have given the details of the victim to the news outlets. So they are also awaiting judgment. So those are some of the instances where it is happening in real life, and you should be aware to avoid such kind of punishment. Now, the Supreme Court in Nipun Saxena versus Union of India in 2018 made it absolutely clear no media house shall disclose, directly or indirectly, the identity of the victims of sexual offenses. In Delhi High Court in 2021, it further prohibited newspapers from publishing photographs of juveniles, those in conflict with law, especially in theft cases, reinforcing that anonymity under Section 74 of JG Act is absolute. I'll just come to a conclusion of my sharing. When I just want to share it with a thought that when the media protects the dignity of child, it protects the soul of a nation. When you deal their stories with empathy, you give justice a human face. When you choose restraint over sensationalism, you prove that journalism is not just a profession, it is a public trust. As member of the fourth pillar, you do not merely reflect society, you help build it. Let your coverage be a force not just for accountability, but healing. In the end, a child-friendly media is people-friendly democracy.
This commission, Nagaland State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, was instituted only in 2013 through the Act of Parliament that was passed in 2005, Protection of Child Rights. So, though it has been there for the last 10 years or so, we couldn't do much earlier because there were some lapses, shortcomings, or so like that. But then, after the new team took over in 2023, we are trying our best to disseminate information right down to the grassroots level, and then mobilize all those, agencies which are there to take care of child rights. Actually, this commission is an autonomous statutory body which is also vested with legal power. Basically, our duty is to monitor all those agencies that is dealing with the child rights, and also the departments, programs, policies, government policies that is relating to child. So we are there to see that all these things are, executed, implemented according to the Act and according to the, law, the rules that has been framed. So that is basically the function of the commission.
It is encouraging to note that the NSCPR has been, this year has been very proactive in disseminating this news, this child-friendly media and about the child rights. I believe they had a workshop in July with the Kohima Press Club in July also. So while we know that child-friendly media has many dimensions, I will restrict myself to a brief about what media, the responsibility of the newsroom and news organization. When we talk about child-friendly media, we often think about laws, protocols, and in the case of the news media, editorial checklist that we need to do while carrying news about this, about child rights and child incident involving child. However, at the heart of the matter, I feel is that when it comes to child rights and issues about child rights, sometimes silence protects. Right? Silence protects, and us, a media, and the media, more than anything else, must know that silence serves greater good for a child, dignity, privacy, and future than any other. As I mentioned earlier, at the July KBC workshop, a judge has reminded us how media plays a very pivotal role in protecting the identity of the children, whether the child is a victim, whether the child is accused, or as we say, legally conflict with law, or as a witness. And one question that the judge raised during the time, lingers in my mind, that is whether media priorities are aligned with child rights or with sensationalism or, let's say, content creating. Right? This question is not abstract because over the years, the reality in Nagaland has been changing. And because at the same time, now everyone is a potential publisher. The question of media gatekeeping the news has sort of died down. So in such a scenario, how should a newsroom or news organization respond? And I feel that the protection of a child's identity, or for that matter, by extension, identity of women, crime against women or victim of crime against women, especially those concerned with sexual nature. So it's no longer a newsroom issue, but a societal one. Now, we all know that every year when the National Crime Bureau publishes the report, the latest one was published last month, concerning 2023, Nagaland was, officially tagged as the safest state for women and also, let's say, to extension for children. However, we have seen that there is as the chairman has rightly pointed out, rise in crime against women and also dominance of POCSO cases. While this could be because of more reportage and awareness or people asserting about their rights, this also shows how protections become more important. So this makes one thing very clear. As more cases surface, protection of identity becomes paramount. And we all know that the legal framework is very clear. Several Supreme Court rulings has cautioned media or has affirmed about the protection of child identities or crime against women, offenses against women, the victim, to protecting the victim's identity. And even in the case of death, we have to respect the dignity and the privacy. But I feel that the deeper challenges are. That's why I was very happy to know that the chairman has spoken about disseminating news at the grassroots level, because it is our culture of communication, right? So in Nagaland, we often see very well-meaning organizations, union, churches, student bodies. Right? Whenever an incident occurs, they issue a condemnation notice. And in that condemnation notice, what we know, we come to know about the identity of the child or the victim, obviously, because we are very much like to say about our bona fide members of the society, our bona fide villagers, or all those things. So disregarding all the identity question, that protection question that arises. So a locality name or a school name, a forwarded statement, and though the traditional media and also other kind of media might exercise some restraint, because the news or the press statement or whatever the condemnation note are being spread across various social media platforms without any check and balances. So that creates the issue of identity become very. It no longer become a secret, right? So in that society, in such a situation, what should a media do? So media must set the tone, right? At least they shouldn't fall victim to such speed of sharing news or sensationalism or protection of identity must be our crux. In a closed society like ourselves, identity and community sentiments are sensitive, and even minor lapse could create a long-term serious consequences. So therefore, protecting a child identity or minor is not just compliance with regulatory terms, but it should be about larger responsibility. For me, it's about preserving dignity, avoiding vandalism, preventing community from sliding into reactive behavior. Often we tend to do that. And so at the end, the child is best protected by silence, not exposure. Right? For example, like a child involved in a case today as a victim or as a person in conflict with law will grow into adulthood, and they shouldn't carry the scars of what happened now to the future. It shouldn't follow them into the future, right? So at the end, a child-friendly media must be a stabilizing force, not an amplifier of emotion. And what media needs to do in such a situation, first for me is that knowing when to withhold, right? Secondly, placing protection about virality or popularity. And thirdly, treating child's identity as very sacred, not just a mere content. So it is therefore essential that our newsroom communication as well as wider economic ecosystem of communication is built on not just coverage, but safety, dignity, and freedom to grow for a child without undue public exposure. A child-friendly media environment ultimately is about reducing harm, which incidentally is also a core responsibility of a media, right? And promoting rights of the child at every stage of news gathering and publishing. And this is the media environment that a child deserves.